evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's school board meeting. Would you all join me for the pledge of allegiance? Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next on our agenda, we have public participation. So if anybody is here that would like to get up and speak, please do at this point. Anyone? Jen, do we have anybody online that would like to participate in public participation?
So I did indicate in the chat, if anyone would like to indicate, go ahead to share something with the board. Please unmute yourself at this time and indicate your name and your address or your role. Thank you. I do not see any messages in the chat, however.
Okay, thank you, Jen. So at this point, we'll move on to old business. First thing on our old business is a pre-bid form for lighting upgrades. I think
this. Move this to the end of old business since we have people here to do stuff.
I think you guys put this on delay because I wasn't here. Look at it. I don't have any questions at this point.
Okay.
So to me, I think it's going to be a short discussion, but go ahead, Tim.
So within our board folder, we have a notice of public hearing, and that's projected for April 5th, which is next Monday.
Yes.
Statute requires the 7-day notice. Is it in the paper tonight?
It went in the paper on Saturday.
Okay, so we have
We're
sufficient
good.
notice for that?
We are
Okay.
clear.
Thank you.
But that's not regarding this topic, right? That's something else?
That's something else.
Okay.
I do, just so you know what I said last week, I don't know if you saw last week's meeting, but I foresee myself bringing this in front of you probably 2 to 3 times before I get it right, so.
Right. The only thing, I forward you some additional
I got that,
potential
yeah.
bidder.
Yep.
Or person that may consider the bid.
Yep.
At this point, I guess my question is, how many do you have that's going to be directly solicited?
Well, at least half a dozen right
Okay,
now.
good,
So,
good,
yeah.
good. So I think, like I said, we want to get as many opportunities for quotes as possible. So I don't have any suggestions on top of what is presented, and when do you feel you'll be bringing us a formal written scope?
I mean, well, I give a matter of weeks, but I don't know how many meetings you plan on having next month versus this month. Give me at least 2 meetings.
Okay,
So,
so I think we'll just put on the agenda when it's ready to go.
okay.
Anyone else with discussion on that topic? Not hearing any. Also, Joel Shagnon is going to be attending us a little bit later in the meeting. He had some errands he had to run. Everyone else is in person. And moving to our next item is the strategic design presentation. Go ahead, Misty.
Is that microphone on? I believe so. It's going to be going to not out into the room now.
Okay. So we as an administrative team decided that we'd put together a short video to share out the highlights of the strategic design from the event in January. And we also have a couple of people who participated in the event that would like to speak after the video is finished. And then we'll open it up to you as a board to ask us questions. Hopefully you've had a good chance to really go through the final revised version that came to you. So we'd like to share this video with you first, and then allow Megan Henry's here, and Katie Mae White, I believe, is online, so they would like to speak to it as participants. So we'll start with this, so hopefully it plays.
Farmington School District Strategic Design. Why do we need a strategic design? The strategic design is created to provide the guidance for an organization to operate at its ideal best. The design is based on research, expert opinion, accepted theory, and successful experiences of people from all facets of life. It involves representatives from within the organization, the community, and students. The strategic design is written as architectural plans in order to provide the engineers and builders of the system to have clear and detailed instructions, leaving little to hope and chance. Our new and improved mission for the Farmington School District is now written as a memorable and powerful tagline that will be at the forefront of all we do. We empower and engage learners to thrive with resilience. Core values are descriptions for how we will work together to achieve our mission and vision. We added 2 new values and better defined the original set to create the acronym A Tiger Is. Here are some 5th grade students sharing them with us.
A tiger is
A, accountable. T, trustworthy. I, exclusive. G, growth-minded. E, empathetic. R, respectful. I, innovative. S, successful.
Our new mission and visions for our school system lead us to transform from the traditional structures and methods of schooling that lead to a picture like this, to images like these that show learners in and out of the classroom learning, engaged, and empowered. The visions provide the compass or detailed plans for all the components of the organization. These vision statements may not be happening yet, but are what we want to look like, feel like, and be like when operating at our ideal best. Here are some students sharing some of the statements from the learning vision.
I look forward to coming to school each day. I am challenged every day and leave feeling that I have learned. My teachers build voice and choice into my learning experiences, and I even get to design my own.
I like knowing if and when I make a mistake. It is just part of the learning process.
I feel safe and valued by my teachers and school leaders. I know they like me, and I know I can get help when I need it. My learning experiences include volunteering within my community.
I utilize technology that works efficiently anytime and anywhere, anyway, to access and enrich my learning experience.
I am learning how to effectively work with others and groups, including understanding diversity.
The strategic design process creates learner exit outcomes that articulate the understandings and skills in the spheres of living. These then are mapped to the discrete learning goals in our learning progressions model of curriculum and housed in a learning management system to provide the structure for any possibility or ideal learning experiences. The exit outcomes are the roadmap of learning to ensure all our learners will be able to say with confidence and evidence, I'm a graduate who is a self-realizing person, an engaged lifelong learner, an intuitive contributor, informed and involved citizen, empathetic and mindful partner, open-minded participant, and global citizen. When we have the best structures, we can meet all our learners' needs, interests, and styles of learning while opening far more opportunities for learning beyond the school building and maximize community, technology, and social learning. When we can track learning from anywhere and have systems where the learners can design their own learning experiences, there is nothing we can't do, only just need to imagine it. Imagine being able to have dynamic spaces, real community involvement that allows learners to gain academic credit from those experiences. If we think like entrepreneurs, we could have a model that brings in kids from the region because we are able to customize and engage like nowhere else. We just have to believe and have a vision we can. When our staff is able to collaborate in meaningful ways with each other and community to put kids in the driver's seat of their own learning, the motivation and engagement soars. What do we want for our Farmington future graduates?
Hi, my name is Angela Schoonemaker, and I'm a first grade teacher at Valley View Community School here in Farmington. I would like to share with you 2 different students that are in my class and 2 different reasons why strategic design would be beneficial for the Farmington community.
Natalia, why did you do your math back? Because I like taking math. Good job, and how is that going to help you later? When I'm older, I'm going to do jobs and I'll be better at my job.
Awesome. Can I take a video of your math book? Awesome. Math back, finish up during recess.
So if you look at just this one, what do you think you can do first? Which one? So you can solve this one. Will that help you to know how to solve this one?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so what do you do?
Yep.
And
I saw one in the picture in July 13th.
correct, Martha.
So what does this one mean?
They're all right.
Okay, so, what are you hoping for to get out of your ELO experience?
I'm hoping to get out of my ELO experience is to be able to bond with animals and just learn about something that I like to learn about.
What are you hoping to get out of your ELO experience?
I want to experience what it's like to become a teacher.
As a senior this year, I've been planning to go into an apprenticeship program, and I'm planning on taking my experiences in high school and applying them into my future work.
I'm a future graduate who plans on going to college. Undecided at the moment, but I plan on future as college.
I'm a future graduate who's going to go to trade school in Hampton and become an electrician and invest my money and have a good life.
I am a future graduate who will go to college and become a counselor.
Play again. So that kind of gives you an idea, somewhat of an overview of really what all those words in that document are trying to depict. And, you know, we have a lot of great things happening in Farmington currently. And part of what we wanted you to see is some of those things are already happening that you see in those vision statements. Extended learning opportunities, if you don't know what those are actually student-designed experiences for credit. And it's a pretty great thing that we have already at the high school. So that's just really one example of, you know, you'll see a lot of those things, student-designed experiences. So that's an example of what that might be. Looks a little different K-8, but that's certainly one that's happening at high school. A lot of the things that you see in the strategic design match up nicely with our NEASC report and some of the things that we are told that we have for recommendations, which we all, I think, agree with, so you'll hear about that. So what I'd like to do now is to just give an opportunity for those participants that participated in the strategic design to be able to have a chance to chat, so share. So Megan has asked if she could speak, so I'm just gonna get out of her way.
Such a long walk.
Hello, I'm Megan Henry. Currently, I am a teacher, a special education teacher at Valley View Community School. This is my 19th year in Farmington. I've held many roles. I've been a classroom teacher, special education teacher. I work primarily with students with developmental disabilities and autism. So I'm currently doing a program with that. In my years in Farmington, I've seen a lot of things come and go, and come and go, and come and go. In 19 years, you see that. I'm not just a teacher here, I'm also a parent here. So that I have a lot of stake in what's going on in this community. Plus, we have community stuff going on too. So being on the strategic design committee was something I really wanted to do. I was blown away with the structure and how everything was organized. And I honestly wasn't expecting what we got. It was really well done. We had students on the committee, we had parents on the committee, we had community members. It was just all inclusive, which is actually one of our core values. Thank you. One of our core values is just having everybody included in everything. And I think when we're doing these things, it's really important to have the community involved, the parents involved, just so much. There was a couple school board members on there as well, so I thought that was really important. I really like how there was just so much information. It was a lot to go through. It was very good, but the way it was broken down and how we could have so many really good, intelligent conversations, getting everybody's opinion, and it wasn't just something that was just given to us. And I think that was really important as a staff member. And I even put myself in with my different hats. I was able to say, as a parent, what do I want my kids to do? As a teacher, what do I want to do for my students? I've also had the opportunity to do an ELO with a student from the high school 2 years ago. And that was a great opportunity. A student wanted to be a special education teacher. So I was happy to have a student come and do those things. And it's a great opportunity. I love that. And it was student-led. We had lots of conversations on what the kind of things that she wanted to do. And she had a great year doing it. And I was really happy to help. So I guess that's kind of like what I wanted to say.
Did you want to talk about Jaden's experience?
Oh, so my son Jaden Henry was involved as well. I have to say, he's probably like, I hope he's not watching. So he's really hard to get up in the morning. Just saying. We were up at 8. He had to be on the computer like 8:30 in the morning. Let me tell you, getting him up in the morning to go to school because he's 16 is often difficult. Friday night was our first session, and I was in a different room than him. He came, I saw him after the session, and he's like, Mom, what'd you think? And I was like, yeah, it was really good. I was like, what about you? He's like, it really was good. I was like, okay. And he started talking to me about it. And he was really invested in what it was. The next morning, I pop in, I'm like, okay, we have to be on in a half an hour. I didn't have to say another thing till we got up. I was like, okay, that's weird. But from what I heard, I was only in one group with him because there was a lot of people and the groups were kind of designed. I actually didn't want to be in any groups with him just because he's my son, and I didn't want to influence anything for him. And I heard from a lot of people, a lot of feedback on how his information, what his view and his point of view was really helpful as a student. So it was really, and he was happy to do it. And so he did have a good time doing it, and he felt included. He did not want to come and talk at a school board meeting. Sorry, that's where he draws his line. So if you have any specific questions for me, I'd be happy to answer it, because there was a lot of information, but I feel like what the whole team came up with was definitely, there were some things that we struggled with, and I'm probably one of the loudest ones out there saying, I don't know about that. But being able to hear what everybody had to say, my mind was changed several times, which is great, and there was a lot of reason for that. So my hope is that you guys really take this on and we can move forward with it. I'm excited about a learning management system too, which is a part of all of this as well. So if you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Anyone with any questions? No?
I got a comment. Thank you for taking the time out of your personal time and participating in the process.
Absolutely, anytime. Like I said, this is not just my work, it's my family and my community as well.
Okay, thank you, Megan.
Is that it?
Next person?
Thank you.
Katie May, I don't know if she's on, but she wanted to speak, and so you might want to.
Katie, are you on?
Digitally.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
We can. There she is.
Hi, everyone. Should I talk now, or do you know?
Go ahead.
Say your name now so they know who you are.
Great. My name is Katie May White. I graduated from the Farmington school system in 2012. I graduated undergraduate in Vermont in 2016, and I'm going to be graduating master's school this spring. So that's just a little background on me. I moved back to Farmington after undergraduate, and I live here now. Being a part of this process was really interesting. Misty reached out to me in January and said that someone had said I would be a good person on the team. So I joined along with my mom, Joyce White, who's the assistant director at the Goodwin Library. And we both brought sort of this slightly outside perspective, since it has been so long since I went through the school system, and since she's downtown at the library dealing with students in that sense. I found the process to be really well done. I felt like everyone had a voice. I was able to bring my perspective as a previous student and as someone who had gone through college with the Farmington experience and the challenges and opportunities that laid out for me. And she was able to bring her perspective as a community member and as someone who interacts with students through their learning process in a slightly different way. We also got to hear from teachers who were bringing their evidence, their experience in the classroom, as well as their professional development, and some students as well, current students, bringing their experiences that are happening right now, and other support staff as well from the school. Everyone was able to bring up topics as diverse as what's going on in the world today, what our students are going to need in the future, what they need now, how do we roll these things out over time. Most of the stuff in this plan isn't going to happen in the next 2 years, but it's going to happen by the time the kindergartners graduate, and that's important. It's important to plan for things that are going to happen in the future that we don't really understand yet. So a big part of this process was imagining future conditions and what's going to happen and what we're going to need to prepare our children for, basically. There was a good balance of some people are going to want to go to college. Some people are going to want to get really educated. Some people, that's not the path for them. They want to get a trade. They want to learn hands-on experience out in the community. How do we increase the interest in that? How do we get people to do that hand-on learning? And how do we get the community members really invested? So everything that's laid out in this plan was thought out from multiple different angles, and I hope you take the time to read it. We went through so many different levels, and everything was considered by multiple people. The wording, it was considered often, and it was passed over multiple times. So, yeah, I'm also happy to answer any questions about this process that you might have. But, yeah, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
Thank you for volunteering your time to participate. Anybody else with
I don't know if
feedback?
there's anyone on or not. Those are the only two that said they would like to speak, so. Speak up now if you're on there and want to say something.
Is there anyone else online that would like to share their experience?
And I don't know if you have any questions for us. Oh, somebody might be trying to.
So I guess my question for you, Misty, is we finished this one point, and where do we go from here? What are our next steps?
We need the board to approve it, and then we'll need to start planning from it.
So the document that you forward in our folder, which I reviewed, but some parts were in our presentation.
The larger document that has all of the future conditions listed, all of the vision statements, that's the document that we're looking for approval. We didn't try to read that entire thing to everyone tonight. It is somewhat text dense and felt that might be a little bit hard for folks to sit through. I'm happy to put it up online and make it available.
So in going through this, you have, I guess physically, how are we going to take each one of these sections and roll that into what type of curriculum we want to design or implement in our school district? You know, we have the future, the proposed, if you look at the future conditions under these different topics, and then we have exit learner outcomes. So I guess how does this specifically going to roll into curriculum recommendations or curriculum design?
So those exit outcomes are actually a real key component to our curriculum structure moving forward once those are approved. And once we have the right technology to house them in, they will match up with our learning progressions quite nicely, which are already our instructional goals that the staff has, the model of curriculum that we've already started to work into. And once that's inside of a learning management system, it becomes the foundation for building out all instructional design, It becomes what we use as a lens to choose curriculum resources. It's, you know, it happens over time. It doesn't happen tomorrow. But that's the beginning of it, is getting that basement done, which is those learning progressions and exit outcomes mapped out so that we can then track those and make that part of our everything we do, from what we want kids to learn to how we get them, how we deliver that learning, and all the different opportunities that we can create and create bridges both in and out of the school for kids to have experiences to be able to meet those and master those, to how we report out on those things in our grading and reporting and transcript structure. So those become what we want kids to learn, and then everything else is built around that. And then all the other visions, if you look, they really come together around that learning vision. What's the technology we need? How do we collect evidence in the different ways and track that progress? To, you know, our instruction, how we instruct. So each of those wheelhouses are really detailed and depicted, and then we bring that all together. And ultimately, once this is approved, we then get to work on our first 5-year plan. So how do we pace this out? What's the build out and the pace going to be? Because not all of that can happen tomorrow. We have to pace that out. And we have to work collaboratively with staff and students and parents and community to do that.
Anyone?
I got a question.
Go ahead.
I saw the list at the beginning of all the participants in the strategic design. Out of that list, how many were community members?
20, I think. I'd have to go back and count.
Okay.
On it.
20, a round number is good.
Yeah. We had more than that originally, but you know, before the event, not all of them came.
I guess my only comment is, one, I'd like, you know, I spent a good time over the weekend in strategic design and accreditation. And in a lot of ways, there's parallel points between them.
Yes.
Strategic planning is a board function under the administrative rules. And a lot of what we're doing for strategic planning obviously is incorporated into this process. And in this community, one of the things that I want to see is, if we have buy-in to the community, we have support, budgetary-wise. So as we're defining our graduate, I think we need a workshop or a meeting to get some more of that public input, that if we're going to fund this, if we're going to say this is our balance, if we're going to push it forward, we've got to make sure that in a population of 7,000 people and almost 780 students, that we have buy-in into the community. And I love the strategic design. I see the work that was put into it. I see it's coming back as a good product. But it's not something that, within 2 days of me looking at, that I'm going to say, we're ready to take that leap. I think we have more work to do as a board, and I think we have more work to do as a community.
So my question, based upon your comments, how would we get, I mean, I don't think this is, was this available public online, Ms. Allen?
Not yet.
Not yet.
So looking at it as a person that I didn't participate, or initially I planned to, but I didn't, and reading it from my seat here at the table, how would we present this in this exact form to the residents and ask for feedback, or would it be structured differently to give them a better understanding of what this process's direction is, I guess? I mean, if somebody was experienced with this, they could read this and say, oh, I understand where it's going. But just for a layperson to sit down and read this, they go,
So it doesn't get presented to them in this way. I mean, these are really detailed plans for, you know, and the internal people kind of really need to take this on. But we have to present this outwardly in different messaging, you know, to really make it clear and sort of the Cliff Notes version. And then get more, and part of the process moving forward is to get into, community forums and start talking about these things with the community and get their ideas of how they can really navigate with us on this. So it's not that we stop talking to the community once this moves forward. It's part of our planning process to have much better communication tools, get into different organizations and meet with them around this, having more community forums, and that really never should end. It's not like, this should be something that we structure that's ongoing. It's part of our personnel vision and stakeholder vision to really start to engage and have more formal ways in which community can give feedback that is ongoing, that's consistent around lots of different things, not just something like this.
Diana?
If I can just make one comment. What I love about the possibility of this is the way that we can assess students differently. So for instance, we see that, right? We see that, that's just Megan agreeing with me, but we see this one little girl out on the playground who's writing out her math facts. She's not sitting there with a piece of paper and duplicating them. She's writing them out on her own. And then we see her again. I think it was again the same young lady going into the classroom. But we see, and even if it's not, we see that idea of her process of thinking that the teacher's cueing her into. Well, if you use that to solve this problem, how can that help you solve the next problem? And that's exactly the kind of thinking that we want our students to do. And that's why I think the strategic design is just so exciting for the possibilities that it has. We had these students that were engaged in a game. That too could have been a means by which to measure what do they know about shapes if they're picking certain shapes and they have to move them from one place to another. It opens up such a world of possibility and makes us so different if we're thinking marketing of our school district, so different from what anyone else is doing out there. And that, I think, is what makes me so excited about the possibility of this. So I thank you so much, and the people that participated in letting us, kind of go through this exercise. I found it extremely valuable.
Thank you, Diana. So if we will, go ahead, Ruth Ellen.
And I think, too, this becomes, if accepted, the foundation of the next series of discussions. I don't think that this becomes necessarily the chiseled in stone, cannot deviate from. It's the springboard for the next set of where we're going. Because this isn't a plan. This is the building blocks for a plan. It's the architectural pieces that the plan is built from. It's not the building itself. And I think that's one thing I want to make sure that people understand. This is not a curriculum we've brought to you.
No.
This is a series of ideas that a large group of stakeholders have come together and said, these are important. Together they reflect a lot of who we are as a fairly diverse group. And these are pieces that we want considered as these other things now move forward. And so this isn't, in adopting, it doesn't mean that this becomes, it's foundational, but it's not necessarily bedrock. It forms that undergirding of where things can grow from there. It's more like very well composted topsoil that they can grow from, as opposed to something that things are stuck in. It's a good set of, here's where we can grow. And as Diana said, it's also a great marketing piece for us to be really looking at what can we do differently. I mean, we've talked about through learning loss, through conversations with this group, how do we truly catch a vision to set ourselves apart and make this different? How do we do things differently? How do we engage kids? How do we bring that joy back into learning? And how do we really make this dynamic as opposed to, here's a book, here's a pencil? This doesn't give us the book or the pencil. This doesn't give us the direct path. It says, here's your possibilities. Start designing from here. It's kind of your design book.
Tim?
I guess my question is, as a school district, who's our customers?
kids first and foremost. They're who we serve.
Okay, and who else? Who do we work for?
Families.
Community, taxpayers. I'm diving into, because of the accreditation process, we're looking at the vision of a graduate within the strategic design process. And I don't think we can say what that vision of the graduate is. We're talking to 20 people in a community of 7,000. And I think COVID had a big play in that.
Certainly.
So I'm just not ready. It's bring at work, and I'm not trying to be negative, but I'm saying if you're looking for a vote tonight that says we're going to adopt this tonight, I'm not at that point yet. I've got 2 discussions in non-public tonight that could greatly affect what we're looking at here from a marketing perspective. I like what I'm seeing, but I'm not there as far as an approval. Approval will come, but I think as a board, we have to internalize of where do we go on the next step. The content's brilliant.
So I guess following up with the point that you made earlier regarding getting some information out for any additional public, I guess, is that something we can do in a relatively short time, whether it's this document or something that includes the significant, or say the goals and objectives of this, to potentially get something out that we could potentially get another crack at some community feedback. I don't know if there was a planned next step as far as that community involvement that we could pull in to, now that we have this draft plan before us, where we could say, okay, this is the result of that, with potentially questions, comments, concerns, while we're considering this. I mean, is that reasonable to be able to pull together? Just a question. And that's typically, I guess, what has been done in other strategic design events, from not in our community, because this is the first one.
I guess my question back to you would be, as you say, looking to get additional feedback, both you and Tim, what is your view of what you're looking for? Because I know kind of what we've had and what we were looking at next steps, but I want to understand what it is that you're looking for back so that we
based
can make
upon
sure
the
that's it.
presentation, like one of the things was the spheres, and each one of those spheres represented a section that was touched upon in this report, whether it's the civic sphere, and in that was, some, I guess, discussion which led to what the participants felt were the future conditions, and what they felt that a graduate should have strengths in based upon those future conditions. So if that sphere is the graduating student in some ways, and their total encompassing of what they've learned in school, I guess how could we present that they say these are the goals of our education in all these sections which contain basically our education that we're moving forward. Isn't it, in essence, that's what it is? Because if you're saying these are the spheres of knowledge that we're going to
Well, these are the
design,
spheres of living that people exist in. I mean, you're both a civic participant and a family member and.
Right, but you're going to be developing curriculum targeted for these outcomes in each of these areas. So in essence, we're saying these are going to be the skill sets or knowledge base of the students in these areas.
I think that's fair.
And does it make sense that we would present that to the community in that form? I mean, because is that Isn't that what this is leading to for a goal? Educationally? Saying this is, the spheres of everyone's life that they're involved in, and this is what we want the curriculum to lead their education and knowledge to, and with these outcomes. I mean, these are, there's a lot.
They're broad learning outcomes. I mean, none of these get down into granular pieces of, this is a math outcome, or this is a language arts outcome. It's they need to be able to do this, and then we need to pull the pieces together that enable them to do that.
Right, because based upon this, we've saying, I could probably pull one out. It talked about, in the financial section, it talked about, certain skill set that we wanted them to have. I can't find it right away, but talked about a certain financial skill or knowledge, and I guess, and when you look at that specifically, which is, say, a little bit more targeted result, does the community agree with that? Because that's what we're stating the goal is going to be. I don't think I could find it, but so is that, how do we put that out to say, at another look, the community agrees or disagrees? Okay. Looking for that potential additional feedback, because I don't know if you just can't plop this out there.
Certainly we can.
You could, but without some
additional
forefront of what they accomplished and with how this is going to go to the next step, I don't think people can just pick it up and go, I know where they're going. Tim?
Share another statistic that was kind of shocking to me as a long-term member of the community. Back in 2018, which was the last numbers that we had available, 50% of our senior class moved on to higher education. And 50% did other things. And there's nothing wrong with going into trades. There's nothing wrong with going into the military. We're going to have a mix of what leaves our district. But as a taxpayer, and even as a board member, sitting here for a year, and as a parent, I was shocked at that number. I would expect it to be higher in the 75, 80 percentile. And I think that's something saying to the community, and COVID's hampered it big time. What do you expect us to do? I'm tired of hearing in the social media, because it's not true. I'm tired of us being referred to as a failing school district, because we're not. And there's so much positive that needs to take place. So how do we take at least 50% of our district parents, because that's typically what we see on a good day, and say, what's our marching orders? What do you want from this board? What are you willing to invest? What do you want to see our outcomes as? Because one of the things that I heard prior to election is, I don't mind investing in my education. As a taxpayer, I don't mind investing in education, but I want to see a return on investment. So how do we engage the community and identify what their perception is of a good investment, and know that we're giving the taxpayers the return that they want? And that's kind of the only area that I'm having a hard time with, is that perception of what is a graduate. And I think it needs more work.
So I guess my question for you, Tim, did you do any research or look up any other neighboring school districts to what their percentage of students moving on to higher education is?
I didn't, and I actually didn't pick that up as a statistic in strategic design. It was a statistic that was put out in the NEASC, and I looked at it and started crunching numbers, and I went, wow. You know, and the question that hit me in the face is that an acceptable, and it may be, is that an acceptable value?
Do you have any personal knowledge, Ruth Ellen or Mr. anybody, what the average is for students in high schools in New Hampshire that move on?
We can go in the CDO meeting.
Do you feel
I don't know
we're
off the top of my head.
at the average or
It's
we're?
published on the state DOE.
Yeah, but do you think we're at the?
They're usually 2 years behind, but
Right, do you think we're in the middle, or at the lower portion, upper portion of that percentage? I mean, I don't have any,
I would have to go back and look. We're obviously not in the upper portion. I don't think we're dead last either. But I would have to go back and look, and my computer's over there, so.
anyone else? Josh or Mary?
I did participate in it, and I was energized, let me put it that way, for the different people that I know by face and I know by name, but I had never really had the opportunity to look within. I think my comment on strategic design is, this was as Jim said, this is a brilliant piece of work. I can relate to almost all of it. I was in some of the groups that we didn't all concede. My vision of strategic design, after I've been through it and stepped away, is that it's a middle piece. Because I'm not sure that we're ready to go to planning the future until we've stabilized and completely understand where we are right now. I just don't, I see, find out where we are now, implement this, and then score your outcomes. I think that's where I'm struggling. And the other part is, as I look at the participants, depends on how you count them. I mean, I see people here, like Mrs. Henry, who serve different roles. But if you look at just the people who are community only, don't have ties to the school, they don't teach here, they don't have students here, you're looking at 10 people out of 45. And I concern myself with that going through the process. I'm like, where is everybody? You know, were they not invited? I don't know. I know I reached out to several people and they said, we didn't even know what was going on. But I think before we implement, I'm going to go strong with, we really, I don't want to say put it under more about the players.
Tim, then I have something.
Yeah. I understand what Mary's saying, but I just want to comment that a part of what's going to bring those answers to us, I think, is the learning management system that we've already said we're going to invest in, because I think that's going to give us an incredible amount of data as where we are today, who's struggling, who's exceeding, and how do we help the people who are struggling and push forward the people that are exceeding.
But don't we do that before we do this?
But that's coming.
But we need to have this in order to build that out. Because if I don't have an end in mind, for me to be putting in information to say this is where we're headed and not know where we're headed makes this kind of some of that garbage in, garbage out type thing, which we've dealt with other systems. We need to be able to very clearly specify that's the goal and here's the roadmap to get us there. And if we build a system that doesn't have that inherently built in, then we're throwing good money after bad. And I don't want to do that.
But
Go ahead.
To me, the end goal would be, what is the vision of the graduate? What is that? We need to define our graduate in an encapsulated spot. Both of the studies that we're addressing tonight, that's a big, we don't have that. We don't have the vision. We don't have continuity of curriculum from building to building. We don't, I'm frustrated because I'm not positive that we have the starting point defined or the ending point defined. and to put something in the middle that will get us from somewhere to somewhere. It's not settling. Somebody tell me what I'm missing.
So, question, Mary, the other one you're referring to was the NEASC?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess, so my question is, going through the NEASC, we had a review that was 2 years ago.
Okay, well, and there's a presentation coming on that too.
Okay?
Yep.
So, and now we've got one that's current that we're going to look at. And based upon that, you know, we'll say we're trying to be on a path to be accreditation in 2 more years. That's what I kind of read out the tea leaves. Maybe that's not the case. If this is a 5-year plan, right, to draft and formulate the curriculum, right?
This isn't the 5-year plan.
No.
This is what the 5-year plan is built from.
Right.
This is not the plan itself.
Right, but if this is the first layer,
okay,
that everything's going to be built off from with these end goals, and we're 5 years out, then are we even going in the right direction to address our shortcomings based upon the NEASC requirements?
Yes.
I would say absolutely yes.
Every wheelhouse in that strategic design addresses something in there, in many cases. For starting with the portrait of the graduate, which is those exit learner outcomes, which is required by NEASC to have those exit outcomes. So that's that whole section right there, is those exit learner outcomes. Everything that's in the curriculum vision, assessment vision, and instruction vision is all around really what is really expected in that NEASC report. They go hand in hand, honestly, having that back end piece to say, this is our vision for all these wheelhouses, and then NEASC then connects to them very well.
All right. So with that said, how many people from the NEASC committee participated in strategic design?
Isn't that 0?
At least 2 over here.
Yeah.
Okay.
There were several from the high school who were on it.
Yeah.
As were.
And we actually invited most of the parents, you know, we contacted personally most of the parents that were part of the NEASC piece, but many of them could not, conflict, or said they were coming and didn't, so we did reach out to them, though.
Okay. 'Cause I know one member that wasn't.
Megan, can you can you please come up to the mic so people at home can hear you?
You can talk.
You use that one.
Yes.
Why is-
So I just looked it up on the DOE, the specific question you had about going off to college, was that what the number you were looking for? Jen?
That's one of them, yeah.
I was looking for it because I didn't know where we rated.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I couldn't.
But that's fine.
So in 2019-2020 year, for entering a 4-year college or university, the total percent was 51.8%. That, it's only giving the statewide average.
And what was any secondary education?
That was for the 4-year. For a 2-year or 3-year, it was 12%. So put those two together.
So it'd be 63%.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then it also breaks it down. So for armed services, so employed was 18.3%, armed forces were 2.7%, unaccounted for were 9.7%, unemployed was 1%. So there is a spot on the DOE that will give you those.
So our numbers for that period were 50%. And
I don't know, was that number of 50% just 4-year colleges, or was that?
I think that was inclusive because I looked at the numbers and I don't remember them offhand, but I started to add them up and I know the 4 years, neither one of them was the 50%. Because they did list the armed services that I think was closer to 3%, and then they had the vocational 2-year schools, and then they had the 4-year schools, and they gave and that report gave numbers, so you had to add the numbers and figure out the percentage. That's what Tim must have done. But I think that there was a total.
Okay. That's just giving you the information that I found.
So we're not that far off.
No, I didn't think that it was.
But there's room for improvement, if that's what our students want to do. Pursue additional higher education.
Right, because some kids don't want to do that, and that's,
Right.
completely up to them.
Josh, any discussion?
I don't have anything to add.
Joel has texted me that he's on his way. I don't know if he was going to make this discussion. And based upon our other thing, does it make sense to table this to the next meeting so we can get on to our NEASC and other things on? I mean, I don't know if we're going to, especially Joel hasn't had an opportunity to comment, on this, but, I think one point in discussion is brought up is how do we take what we've got so far and outreach to the community to see if we will gain any more participation, which may, we may feel that should be considered. And I guess because this was, and if we were to, would we change it, or would we just have an addendum to it if we were to get any substantial feedback? Because this is kind of the end of the work product of that group and really shouldn't be edited by subsequent feedback, because this is the result of that design study. So it kind of stands on its own. It's just whether or not there's additional stuff that may go forward to the next level, I guess, just thinking out loud. Right? Because this process is over and this is the results of that process.
So I guess my question, Charlie, is what exactly are you asking me?
No, I'm just saying, from the discussion, does it make sense that we could put something together in a format that's easily doable, that we could say, okay, this is the source document, and this is the conclusions of those source document, basically, that we're going to then start building the curriculum based upon. So, and present that and, make that available to the community. I mean, because this is a document that you had 50 people work on, right? And has even those participants seen it?
Everyone who participated was given the opportunity to provide feedback, either in multiple group sessions, one-on-one, to get online and put things in as comments. Every single person who worked on this in the original pieces was given that opportunity, yes.
Right, but so wouldn't it make sense that we take this along with some conclusions of this and give another, make that available to the community for any additional comment or feedback that could carry through to the next step?
Certainly.
And the intention was to do forums.
Mike?
You're right.
Oh, yeah.
They can't hear you.
Right.
Sorry. Yes, we can do that. And our intention was to do forums as well.
Yeah.
And get into, and even have individual meetings with certain people in the community to share.
For me, I think that's a reasonable next step, making sure that we can say, okay, this is
Which is exactly what we were looking to do.
And this is what we have, and these are conclusions that are drawn. And, we may be able to gain some more input from the community, which would be, any input would be good, additional input, and then move that along. Because in the end, in considering accepting this, there may be an opportunity where the community has feedback that agrees, would say, yeah, we agree with these goals, even though we didn't participate. Thus saying to this board, saying, okay, we've asked for that feedback, hopefully we get some feedback, and saying that, yes, then we're going to move this along to start then applying how we're going to develop the curriculum to obtain these goals. And we're going to spend the next 5 years doing it. So, it's, I think, something I think we should do. Hopefully we get some discussion.
And I'd like to see that public forum in a workshop setting, so that we're sitting there asking...
Our workshop.
So that we can communicate with the public on what their concepts are, and also help drive some of that public in.
When is our next workshop?
When would you like your next workshop to be?
I don't know. We meet every week, so I can't tell the difference, so.
Moving forward, I am going to need to have a meeting on the 12th. So and you've got a public hearing on the 4th, but certainly that could be public hearing and workshop if you wanted to do that. Or we could look, but on the 12th, I'm going to need at least non-public session for nominations.
Okay. Did you mean the 5th?
Well, the 5th is the one that if we have a choice between the 5th or the 12th, I need a non-public session on the 12th.
Right, but you used the date the 4th.
I'm sorry, I was thinking 4 or 5.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, because the
Yeah.
4th was a Sunday.
The
That's
4th
why I
is a Sunday. I don't want to meet on Sunday,
Okay.
Charlie.
So you're referring to the...
I know we can.
If
I
we're
just
going to
don't
have a
want to.
workshop, it could be the 5th.
The 5th would work as a workshop. You have a public hearing that night as well, but that's the one
But
that's
typically
posted that Tim brought up.
The public hearing is going to last the minimum time that we need to.
Correct.
So it's feasible that we could have a workshop regarding this next week.
Yes, you could.
How are we gonna, within a week's time, get people to come into our community? This is a gym-type setting.
It probably makes sense for it to be
The 19th?
the 19th and/or look at the fact that this may need to be done. You may have one large group setting, but you may need to also have smaller online forums for people who aren't comfortable in a large group setting at this point. And we can do one-on-one as well so that people have an opportunity to ask questions that they may not want to ask in a
So
large
we
group.
would have to have the source documents, this one and, say, some support documents available next week?
Well, these we could put up
Right.
tomorrow in the morning.
Right.
That's
But I
easy.
think you need to have some, at least a cover sheet or letter to
Of
kind
course.
to
Of course.
put it in right context. But yeah, I mean, if we
can
could
do
get the
context.
information out there quickly so people have an opportunity to review it and ask questions and be prepared to be at a meeting the 19th, I think that's doable if we
So
can get it out.
we post the 19th as a workshop.
Well, the 19th is also have the audit presentation.
Okay. The 19th is the audit presentation, and then we can go from that into a workshop.
And that's typically like a 15-minute presentation? Are we expecting any?
Depends on how many questions you have. There's nothing monumental. Or
Their part should be fairly short. It depends upon how much discussion you'd like to have thereafter.
Budget for 30?
Yeah, typically, I don't think it even goes that long.
So we could move our start time on that night,
Earlier.
meeting to 6, and do our public workshop
At
in the
7.
gym at 7. And I think that gives people time to come home from work, and I'll even throw out a concept of people getting out of work and hurrying to school. Do we have a budget, and is that something that outside we have hamburgers and hot dogs for people coming in? They're going to drive people in through the door. Or do we have some type of incentive to pull some of our parents in for that concept? Sometimes you have to buy the coffee.
You buying?
Great idea. I think it's a good idea. We can look at getting some
I may put
grills
you on
and,
the
not for after
Are we
school.
on the 19th at this
Okay.
point? Per committee.
The 19th would be a regular meeting. That's the third. So right now, the 3 Mondays for April are the 5th, the 12th, and the 19th.
And I'm using the word workshop. We may not want to use the word workshop. We may want to have a regular meeting, because if we do post it as a workshop, we can't take any action as far as a vote at the
Unless it's
workshop,
po-
unless we
it's
post it as
posted.
the meeting after.
We should just post it as a public meeting, even if
Yeah.
it's a workshop, so that any decision can be made.
Right.
So, I guess, is that the discussion of the board, that that's what we want to try to do? Have that meeting on the 19th? Public forum? After this information is available to the public?
I think the 19th is going to give a better timeline for parents to prepare. Put
I
the
think it's the
information out
soonest we can
there.
do it, and if everyone's comfortable that we can pull it off, I'm okay with it. The only one would be moving back to the 26th, but
Well, the 26th is during vacation, so that's probably not your best timing.
vacations.
What is that?
You missed
It's
it.
the time when
That was
there are
last
kids
week.
in the
You
building.
missed it.
That's about it.
So is,
We can move vacation.
some people have plans. So is that the consensus of the board? We want to do this on the 19th?
Yes.
I do. I think it makes sense.
And you said that was audit the 19th also, so.
Yeah, we start that,
If we do that at 6,
start early at 6,
It's
do our
possible
business for the
at
audit
6.
and the public hearing, and then convene to the
There's a
gym.
public hearing on the 19th.
No, the public hearing is on the 5th.
Right,
Oh, that's,
the audit presentation.
The audit presentation's on the 19th.
right. And that, but I thought Charlie said we,
I was thinking that was also, but that was on the 5th.
Okay.
And that's, so.
Who's on
So are we looking to meet the 5th, the 12th, and the 19th, or is it the 5th or the 12th?
I would say we're gonna meet them all of them, because the 12th, you had nominations for teachers,
And the
Correct.
5th, we have a public hearing.
and 5th, we have a public hearing. So we're already scheduled for the 5th and the 12th.
Okay.
So the 19th is the additional one, and hey, we're on vacation. So we're not gonna meet every Tuesday. I mean, every Monday this month. So, short month. So I'll make a motion to table this to discussion to a public presentation on the 19th.
second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye.
So yeah, if you could, Misty, can work with Ruth Ellen to get that stuff out to the public, and we'll see what we can roust up for some attendance.
And Tim volunteered to cook, so.
Yeah,
I'll cook, I got no
He
problem.
volunteered to cook. Isn't that what you heard, Josh?
I got no problem cooking.
Hamburgers and hot dogs.
I'll have special food for the guys that voted me to cook. Everything else will be delicious.
Charlie,
Well, I can remember a report somebody voted me to do with a few days' notice. Moving on to our next agenda is a NEASC presentation. So please come up and
Watch the cord coming in from that side.
It dropped on the floor, yeah.
I'm Keely Varley. I'm an English teacher here. This is my 6th year in the district.
I'm Jess Lovell. This is my 3rd year in the district. I'm the ELO coordinator and an English teacher here.
Paul Roberts, principal.
Really?
Oh, I got this. It just stays a little more. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't reach that.
So we're here to just kind of present to you guys the collaborative conference that we had this year. So we had the visiting team from NEASC come and complete their study. So we're just going to kind of go over the timeline for the NEASC accreditation. So what we've done over the past 2 years and what the next couple years will look like. We're going to review with you the identified priority areas that we had set when we did our self-study. The NEASC identified priority areas based off of this visitation, their improvements and recommendations, and commendations, and then what those next steps would be. And then just point out the substantive change policy, which is an important part of the process.
So back in 2019 in the fall, myself and then the previous co-chair before Jess came on board attended a training. We received the handbook for accreditation, and the process was rolled out to our staff. And then we started the process of gathering evidence as a whole staff. And we looked at each standard and kind of split it up between the staff, saying your job is to find evidence for this. We completed surveys with the faculty, students, and community. We had a committee of teachers, the co-chairs, the writers, Ruth Ellen, and parents and students review all the materials. And we gave everything an initial rating, whether it was meets, doesn't meet. Then we sat down and wrote our self-study, which was completed in February of last year. We actually finished it over break. And in the winter, we submitted the self-study and the collaborative conference was scheduled. It was originally scheduled for May of last year, but then COVID hit, was pushed to December of this school year.
So our collaborative conference this year happened over December 7th and 8th. So it was a virtual visit, so it looked a little bit different than previous collaborative conferences just because it was through a virtual lens. Over the course of those 2 days, the visiting team viewed a virtual tour. So we put together a video where we kind of went over all of our our campus here and was able to kind of introduce our staff. The visiting team then completed quick observations by joining in on the Google Meets through all of the different teachers. So we set it up so they were able to actually see every teacher as long as the links were working and technology was in our favor. So they were able to see most of our staff. The visiting team then met with panels of students, parents, administrators, and faculty members, as well as other school personnel to conduct conferences and interviews. And then over December 8th, they wrote their report. They discussed it with the co-chairs and the administrations that evening, and then they completed their report, wrote up the final report that you guys were able to see. We had a meeting to review it, and then completed the report, which is the one that you were all sent.
So when we did our self-study last year, we came up with 5 priority areas of our own, and that included developing a written document describing our core values, beliefs about learning and our vision of the graduate, developing a written curriculum that is consistent throughout all courses and all departments, and developing a school improvement and growth plan, developing a plan for the school community to provide a safe environment, and to work with the community and district to provide school buildings and facilities that support this delivery of the curriculum.
So over the course of the collaborative conference, the NEASC team agreed with our top 3 priorities, or our first 3 identified priorities. Over the course of when we wrote our self-study in December, we were able to make some changes, which we're going to talk about in just one moment. So they actually revised and presented us with 2 new identified priority areas, which is to improve the school climate and culture, and then to improve the instructional strategies and assessment practices, mainly because they felt that through some of the changes that we've recently made, we actually were able to already show some growth on those, the first 2, the 4th and 5th priority areas that we had self-identified.
So we have things that have already been improved since we wrote the self-study last year, because it has been a full year since we wrote it. So we now have a telephone system in our rooms. We have key fobs for the doors, and we have the window in the front office now for visitors. As you can see, we have a new floor in the library, and our students are one-to-one with Chromebooks.
And then, as we saw earlier, we started the strategic design process, as well as identifying learning progressions. So there's a handful of faculty at all 3 schools that have been volunteering to work on learning progressions. And that profile of a graduate, which is identified as one of our priority areas, is met through the strategic design through those exit learner outcomes, if that is approved. So overall, NEASC identified some areas for recommendations to help us meet those priority areas. And the first one was to improve collaboration and collaborative time amongst staff. So looking at coordinating and implementing curriculum, planning and instruction. Again, it's that backwards design that is imperative for us to be able to improve our curriculum and would be assisted through things like the strategic design.
Looking at our student support and including research-based instruction and having PD around that instruction.
Improving our curriculum through research-based instruction. So again, having a well-documented written curriculum that goes beyond just content in textbooks, but really looking at those skills for that, what we want our students to know by the end of the year.
Looking at evidence of student learning, so the assessments that we're using and how we can prove that our students have learned the skills we want them to walk away with.
Expanding our partnerships with the community, so continuing to build our outreach, and in particular, that's something that can be done through the extended learning program, where we're able to kind of build up more official partnerships.
Looking at our intervention strategies, so how we help those students who are struggling. I know we've developed the learning loss committee now, but continuing to develop that.
Formalizing our process for providing support, so looking at how we can identify those students and then how we continue to provide support throughout their years of education.
Having an actual written program for our counseling services, so we know how to help students specifically with our substance abuse counselors and our guidance counselors and how they can best support our students.
And then maintaining adequate and dependable funding for learning opportunities.
And developing plans for capital and maintenance of the school.
So some of the things that the visiting team highlighted as things that we were already doing well, and we're working towards are meeting our standards. So they identified that the community felt like it was a physically, emotionally, and intellectually safe environment, and they were able to see that through their interviews.
The caring attitudes of the staff members towards the students.
The maintenance of policies and procedures to ensure safety.
The initial stages of implementation of the real-time program, which is our advisory program.
The pervasive spirit of wanting to improve the school among the staff.
The newly created units of study with guiding and essential questions, concepts, content, and skills, particularly in the English department.
They noticed the learning that is personalized, relevant, and authentic in some areas of the curriculum.
The expansion of courses outside of the school and extended learning opportunities to meet various needs. We have several students who are doing different opportunities to earn credit.
The specialized programs developed to support and meet the needs of learners, and they identified the Students Assistance Program as one of those.
The collaboration among all personnel to achieve success in meeting students' goals.
And kind of echoing the first one, a safe and healthy environment that supports the staff and student body.
The safety protocols in place to ensure effective and efficient responses to the different crises that pop up. So our next steps, we have 2 years until our decennial visit, and at that decennial visit, they'll decide if we are awarded accreditation or not. So we need to continue connecting our NEASC outcomes to the outcomes of the strategic design and the 5-year plan that will be developed. And we have these 2 years to really show growth in this area. When we get accreditation, it's not that we're perfect and we're like a model school. We're showing that we care and that we have grown enough to prove that we are doing what we're supposed to be doing. And right now, the visit is scheduled for the winter of 2023 or the spring of 2024. And again, accreditation is granted based on the amount of growth that we're showing.
So over the next 2 years, as we continue to develop and show growth, one of the things that we have to make sure that we're doing is continuing to have open communication with NEASC. And one part of that is the substantive change policy. So ultimately, if one of these major changes happens, it's Mr. Roberts' responsibility to notify NEASC within 60 days, essentially because these are items that have been identified that can impact the school's ability to meet any of the standards of accreditation. And so ultimately, it's not that they would remove or ban us from accreditation, but it makes it difficult to adequately show growth if some of these changes are happening.
And some of these changes include the elimination of fine arts, or our upkeep and maintenance becomes diminished, our funding is significantly decreased,
there's significant cuts in administrative positions and supervisory staffing, or guidance counselors or teachers, or we can't accommodate the amount of students that have enrolled, or we have a takeover by the state.
And so that's kind of just our quick summary. Obviously, all of you received the full report, which is also posted, but we wanted to kind of highlight the most important parts because we know that it is a relatively long document.
Thank you. So you've both been involved, or at least one of you been involved since the last, the initial visit?
So I've been here for the last 3 years as a faculty, and I was on the writing committee, but this is my first year as the co-chair.
Okay.
So I filled the spot for our previous co-chair.
So based upon some of the, I guess, recommendations that we would need to show adequate progress in, where do you see, from your experience in working here and in this review, the major hurdles to be? Because some of these may be more difficult to implement than others. So I don't know if you had any, ones that came right to mind that you felt would be the most challenging for us to accomplish.
I guess I like to think about like a strengths-based planning. So I think for us, it's ultimately once we set those 5-year plan and we show that we have something written down, I think our struggle that we have as a district and what I've seen with my 3 years here is that we tend to have a lot of ideas, but we don't necessarily have everything written down, right? Like for curriculum, we didn't have a lot of documents to be able to hand over because of turnover of teachers and staff. So I think that's the benefit of having things like the strategic design and having things like NEASC is that we develop those plans and we have that end goal. And as teachers, we're taught to work backwards. So you look at the end goal and you plan from there. So I think for us, when we have something like strategic design with those exit learner outcomes, once those are in place, we're able to kind of build from there. So the curriculum is something that we can adopt as well. So I think that's kind of like the logical first thing to tackle, essentially. And from there, I think it gives us a clearer picture.
I agree with that. Just to echo, there is a lot of turnover in this district, and I think having something solidified to where we maybe don't have as much turnover, getting teachers to stay, and then having a solid curriculum to show we're doing what we're supposed to be doing would be my top priority.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, Tim?
What's the status today of the accreditation committee that was formed for the project?
Can you see that last part again?
What is the status of the accreditation committee that was formed for the process?
Meaning?
So when this report came back, did it go out to the accreditation committee that was formed to do our self-study to say, hey, after the self-study, we had the visit, this is what the visit came out with for recommendations? Was there any communication with that committee, and is the committee still in existence?
So the staff was notified and was given our self-study today, and part of that is because we want
the collaborative conference.
The collaborative conference, yeah. And so we haven't met with, in terms of the staff that have been part of the NEASC committee. Is that what you're referring to?
Well, what about the students and what about the community members? Because there's a big influx from what I saw on this committee.
One of the requirements is that this is presented to the board publicly before it goes back out to everyone else. So this is that step, and now that will happen.
So is the intent to reconvene the committee back to get us to where we need to be in 2 years?
This is a full staff effort. It's not just the committee. Certainly the committee will be part of this, but it's a full staff effort as well. It's not just those who were on the committee.
Okay. So
we can't do it as the two of us.
Well, the staff the committee was bigger than just the committee as well. But
it's going to take more than just. And I think, I think tonight one of the acknowledgments is there was a significant size committee. Part of that committee was involving students. Part of it was community members, and that shout out needs to go to them because we wouldn't be where we are today if it wasn't without that committee.
Yeah, when we did the self-study portion, before we wrote everything, the students and the parents that were on our committee were phenomenal.
Okay.
You definitely helped a great deal.
So,
Go ahead.
just continuing on, I want to preface this with very pleased with the hard work that went into this by everybody and seeing the difference between the self-assessment study and what NEAS came back from recommendations. So for people that haven't been following the process, the self-assessment study was very, very critical, self-critical, that it said we didn't meet any standards. And then we had the visit, and I think it's 50% of the standards that were actually met. That's a huge undertaking, a lot of amount of professionalism that's in this document. What I take issue with, and it's not with our accreditation committee, it's with NEASC, is as I read the report on page 2, it talks about rising property taxes inspired a contingency of concerned Farmington citizens to call a town-wide vote, cutting the ballot by $770,000. And that's taken in this report as a factual statement. I led that coalition of people in town. And I led a historic attendance at deliberative session. And it wasn't because of the rising property taxes, it was because there was $1 million error built into our budget. That multiple meetings it was brought up, it wasn't addressed, and I went to the budget committee with almost $1 million error. That's what drove the people out to the public meeting, not a cut or negative in education. It also doesn't paint, that statement doesn't paint the picture of the taxpayer who on multiple times said, I don't mind investing in education, I want a return from the investment. So while a cut did take place, the most important statement that needs to be looked at from a community perspective is, we want to invest in education, but we want to see that return in what's in the best interest of our kids. Along those same lines as I go through, and I kind of, again, from NEASC as being accepted factual, is they talk about the boards, and there's 2 boards involved. There's the prior board, and there's a fairly new board that's before you tonight. Keeping the numbers in check. And there's an allusion to the board doesn't provide enough financial backing for our school district. So historically, the facts are, the last 3 years in education, this district has spent $14,500,000. The budget passed by the taxpayers was over $15 million. So there is adequate resources that are being brought forward from the taxpayers that people may not necessarily get everything that they want, but when you're underspending, and last year was an odd year, when $900,000 is being returned to the taxpayer, I think we're being funded at a reasonable level. And again, I'm not directing to the committee, I'm directing to statements that were brought to NEASC, and NEAS taking them as factual statements and not talking to the board. The third comment in there that I think paints the district in a bad light is the board may listen to employees, but doesn't necessarily do what they want. And my response to that, and again, my response to NEASC would be, I've been sitting at the table for a year, and I don't think I've had any conversations with any member of staff at the high school level on a concern that was brought to our board. So there's a picture in the descriptive part of the accreditation process that, not through any fault of the committee, but wasn't verified by NEASC. And I guess my final straw with NEASC, and I'd like to communicate it back, is I look at NEASC as the educational pillars of society. And I'm going to get handed a report with grammatical errors. And I'd like that message brought back to NEASC because I think it's a disgrace. And I give the staff and the accreditation committee an A+ for the work and the drive and the hours that were put into this, and I saw it because my daughter was part of the committee. I give NEASC a C- for this report, and I'd really like to see as part of the process when you reconvene your committee, because you'll often hear me say, if there's a perception, there's a reality. So if there's perceptions within this report, then I'd like to, again, see a workshop with the NEASC committee so that we can communicate what we see as factual back to the committee that may be a different light. And I think it'll also be beneficial so that we understand the financial consequences of where we need to go, and what money we need to spend, and what goals we need to set, and what timetables to make sure that this happens as a reality. So with that, I'll shut up, and but I really want to thank the committee. And the negativity and the facts that I'm presenting tonight isn't geared towards, I want to be clear, not geared towards our district staff. They get the A+. I'm disappointed in NEASC as accepting statements as fact without communicating with the board.
I'll follow with that. I did find some of the NEASC summary of what was going on here to be incomplete, to say the least, and with no reaching out to this board, who is in charge of the district and responsible for making sure everything gets accomplished along, through Ruth Ellen and staff, and not one communication to us regarding any of these details to confirm, hear some of the challenges that were put forth to this board. And I think I agree that it paints us in a light of, which is inconsistent with our actions since that I've been here, which every time that we've been presented an issue, we've tried to address it, whether it's been a financial issue, whether it's an educational issue, whether it's a truancy issue. When someone has come to us and said, we've got an issue, this board says, okay, what are we doing about it? And I don't see that reflected in their summary. And like my concern is I was surprised, and I agree with Tim when you read this, that we were pretty hard on ourselves. And NEASC says, no, you guys are doing a pretty good job in these areas. My concern is, when looking at this, and also in the design review, what we just had the previous presentation, is how are we going to go along that path and actually be successful enough to get accreditation if we're on a 5-year implementation of the strategic design process, and 2 years out, we're going to be seeking accreditation, and most of our deficiencies that are stated revolve, I think, in summary, a lot do, maybe not the most, revolve around the establishment of consistent curriculum through the district, and I think there's one other major point. So, I do want to thank the committee, because they're not responsible for this answer, but as this is a goal before us, if we're seeking accreditation, and I'm sitting here, says, okay, this is the path that we've charted or want to chart, how are we going to accomplish the implementation of the strategic design on a 5-year schedule, and in 2 years be successful enough in these sections? Go ahead.
Go right ahead. I was going
Go
to.
ahead.
You may. So I was going to say, the most important thing for us to think about for NEASC is these new standards that we're being accredited by are new. They're completely different from the ones that were done before. NEASC has done a huge revamping to really structure their process through the same lens as schools, where it's not meant to be punitive, it's supposed to be measuring growth. So even though we have 5 very big areas to address, it's not that all of a sudden we have to be able to check each box off. It's that we have a plan in place to continue making growth. So it's really, do we have to have all of our curriculum written and checked off with a T? Not necessarily. It's that we have the steps in place that we can say that we've started that step and we're moving towards that. And that's kind of what the strategic design, the learning progressions, all this work that has been done within the past year has kind of shown.
we
Okay,
need
thank
to be able to show that we have that 5-year plan and that we have made significant movement down that path. If we've said in the first 2 years, this is what we're looking to accomplish, they're looking to see, did we actually go there? Did we twiddle our thumbs? Was there another issue that came up that shows we know we need to get here, but we did discover that this has to be tackled first, and if we've done that and done that well, that's going to be taken into consideration. It's not just you've written a plan and you missed this piece, therefore the whole thing is a failure. They're really looking to see what growth is being made, what's the trajectory, how is it being done, how is it being supported by the community, and what is it that where are we trying to get? And so I had the opportunity shortly after this collaborative conference met here, and I was taking part of it on this side of the table, to join NEASC as a visiting member of a team in another district. And I got to see how that process works and what writing the documents was like, and it was drinking out of a fire hose for 3 days, but it was interesting to be able to see how it works on the other side of things and really take the standards and dig in on a different level than when you're just kind of doing the self-evaluation piece. Because now you're trying to say, okay, I've got their self-evaluation, here's the standard, they're not seeing this and this, but I see evidence here, here, and here, because I've been in these 9 classrooms, and these are the pieces that they do have, and this is something they think they've got that isn't quite there yet. And those are the pieces that this kind of floats out. And it did for us. It showed that, yeah, you've got some pieces here that you really have a better handle on than you think you do. And here are some things that, in order to get where you are looking to go, need to be your next big priority pieces. And that's what they've given us in those 5 areas.
Okay, any other questions? Well, I do want to thank you for coming and making a presentation, and I'm going to let you sit down so that you don't have to stand there as we continue on our discussion. But I do appreciate you coming and presenting and participating on the committee. So when will they be reconvening based upon this report? Is there a scheduled time that they'll be picking this work back up?
A lot of what needs to be done for this really does hinge on the strategic design process, because one feeds the other. And so while it's not completely tied, the strategic design and that plan forms the foundation. If NEASC is requiring the portrait of the graduate and those core values and the mission statement, well, a lot of that is coming out of strategic design. So those pieces really need to fit into one another. And once those are done, that will drive a good portion of the curriculum work that then undergirds not only what NEASC is requiring, but what we're looking to do to build out the learning management system. They're all parts of the same piece. You're looking at it through different facets of the same prism. I don't know if that fully answered your question.
I don't know if I had a clear enough question to answer.
Okay.
Mary?
I'm all set.
Tim?
I'm good, and again, I just want to, I appreciate the hard work and the diligence that was put in by the committee and the staff at hand, and I think they did a bang-up job.
Joel, anything?
I'm all set, thank you.
Oh, Joel, thanks for joining us. I did have one section wrote down. It said in 2015 the core values were started but never finished for the vision of a graduate.
So there was work that was started there back when Dr. Moore was principal here at the high school. And that process, there was a lot of committee work done at the high school level. It was never brought forward as a formal document to be accepted by the board.
All right.
And those pieces were part of the design work that we did with the strategic design process. So it wasn't, that work was honored, but it was kind of, okay, we have this as foundational, we're gonna see what we need to do and add to that.
So that vision of what a graduate looks like in 2015,
Actually, it was, 15, and then it was again in
Okay.
17, I think, yeah.
is that still the same vision, or it's changed slightly based upon what we feel, how it should be changed?
I think the portrait of the graduate has shifted some because our understanding of what kids need to know and be able to do is continually shifting. And I think that's one thing we need to understand, that our curriculum documents and our, here's where we want kids to get. I mean, we can have broad ideas about, global citizen, informed participant, all of those things, those don't change, but the underlying skills, what made Abraham Lincoln informed and the skill sets that he needed to have for that, the tools he had at his disposal were different. And so kids now who are aspiring to politics may need to be looking at a very different set of skills as far as navigating resources, but as far as oratory and debate and synthesis of ideas, those don't change. So there are some pieces that are different. There are some pieces that are going to continue to evolve. And I think we need to understand that any type of curricular document should never be chiseled in stone. That's why a learning management system is so important, because there are things that can evolve as our needs change, and they will change. A horse and buggy used to be a lovely way to transport people and things, but it's not the most efficient thing now. So there are pieces that we've had to change and will continue to change. We've just bought two new school buses, but there may come a point where there's a much better way to get kids here. I'm waiting for that transporter. I think it would be lovely to just have them materialize somewhere where we wanted them, but we're not there yet.
I kind of like the horse and buggy idea. I wonder if it'll get kids to come into school.
Could be an extended learning opportunity.
Yeah, well, depends whether they have to pick up after the horses or not.
To make diapers.
I think that would affect enrollment.
Mr. Chair, what are we looking at to accept, to just recognize the work? What are you looking for to
Yeah,
see?
I guess that's a question for you, Ruth Ellen. I mean, because it's just a document that's provided to us by them.
We've presented it. It's not something that you are required to...
Bless?
Right.
Maybe that's a good word. I mean, there's no fairy dust for you to sprinkle on it. It's been now presented publicly to our governing board. And now it becomes that piece where it undergirds those pieces that we need to be working toward.
So
Now, is this going to be available to the public, posted on our SAU
Yes,
site?
and there is a public news, give me the word here, public press release, thank you, that will be going out as well.
I think that was in the folder, wasn't it?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tim?
So I guess my question is, if we're looking at a 2-year timeline as part of the high school principal report, can we get an update of where NEASC is in the process so that we can follow along?
So you'd like that part of the monthly report?
I would.
Okay.
When, I guess, if that makes a reasonable updating period, I don't know, do they meet on a monthly basis?
Yeah, I mean,
I think there are going to be some months that there's more movement to report on than others, but certainly there could be a section that, here's what we did, or it's still in process, and when we have the next signpost, he can give you that.
or we didn't meet this month. I mean, it can be as simple as that.
Yeah, the board will, but NEASC might not, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea because you're 24 months away. It's not that far.
Granted, yes.
And some of those months, the school is not in session.
Yes, but most of us are still, a number of us are still here.
Right, but some of the participants in this may not be working during the summer, so out of those 24 months, they may
Sometimes
only be...
that's when a lot of the work gets done.
Yeah. then we'll see that in the report.
Yes, you will.
Anything else on this topic? Again, I'd like to thank everybody for coming to the meeting to present, and
We do.
move on to our next agenda item, which I had added, which is the Red Schoolhouse. And the only reason I had it added was to hopefully spurn to get, I think the only thing we've asked for was a cost analysis. And I think that kind of got on the sideline based upon it not making it to town meeting, so I guess I'd still like to get that value so that we can, as a board, at least consider what we may want to do with this piece of property. So unless the board wants to not pursue this estimate that we've previously approved to be paid for, which I think was about $1,000 approximately.
It was cheap.
Yeah.
So
I don't think we can make a strong decision until we know someone that doesn't have any skin in the game, if you will, that he looks at it and says, no, or yes.
Well, what we had approved was to have Jeff Greenhaw, who we used to assist us with the roof, to get estimates from qualified professionals in the area of the repairs, whatever they may be,
Which
to give
would
us
have
a
to
scope.
include opinions. I mean, you may bring a remodeling company in that says, we can't do anything with this. Or we could bring someone else in that would say, this would make a great thing, and then based on that, I mean, we don't know. We don't know what the...
I mean, the goal was to seek out the cost estimates to bring it up to usable condition.
Okay.
And I think unless this board wants to change that direction, I think if we could get it done in the next couple of months, that would be good. Because then we could maybe come up with what the board wants to do with it.
So you would like to see a cost estimate for that for the 1st of May, 1st of June?
Yeah.
Or at the end of March?
I don't need to set a deadline. I just want to kind of, if the board wants to continue with it, just to get it back moving. And it gets done when it gets done. Because we have to rely on estimates from others. So if I were to put a time frame and you can't get a quote off of a foundation or roofing guy.
Have an approximate time frame. If you say, we'd like it by the end of May, then we can give our
I would just like to see it get
project
done
manager kind of a basic
get done
idea.
in a reasonably soon. Whatever that, because,
Reasonably soon.
I mean, we're coming into the building season, so, I mean, I don't want to put a deadline on it. I just like to see it kind of get back moving so we can get a budgetary number for us to consider, whether we, at the next year, put it back on the warrant, or we decide we're going to undertake the funding, seek the funding, or we're going to not pursue the renovations, so. So I'll make a motion to continue to pursue an estimate on the rehab of the Red Schoolhouse.
Second that.
Any discussion? Not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we just try, thank you, Joel, just try to get it back moving. So next, under new business, we had staff laptop quotes and recommendations. I know there was some late-breaking stuff in the file.
There were some pieces in the folder for you. We got the last 2 quotes this afternoon. I do have a recommendation there for you as well.
Yeah, so we have, just before I give you the floor, Tim, we have 2 at 2:56 p.m. I haven't had a chance to look up at the GCI quote, and there's a SHI quote, and so there's 4 quotes?
There were 4 pieces that were quoted. 2 were quoted by the same vendor.
Okay, go ahead, Tim. I'm going to open them up.
So of the quotes there, and we looked at not only cost, but also our past experience with the vendors. The quote that has the laptops at $999 with Trifera is the one that we would like to go with. It is a few dollars more than the cheapest of the quotes, but our experience with this vendor, they've been extremely responsive, not only in getting materials to us, but also with the warranty work on the other side. If we've had any type of issues with those pieces that are under the protection plan, they've been very, very good in working with us.
So you're recommending the Dell computers?
Yes, the
Okay.
Dell Latitudes.
Yeah. Ready?
What's the failure rate? How many notebooks would you say have to be repaired on an annual basis?
The staff, not as many as the student Chromebooks. I don't have a good estimate on that. I don't know. I can get it for you.
Well, in one of the other quotes, to follow up on that point, one of the other quotes from SHI, which split out the cost of a comparable HP laptop versus the maintenance, or not maintenance, but support accidental damage protection and extended service agreement, is $182, which is not quite 25%, but over 20% of the cost of the item, which, depending on, like if I was going to buy or supply my staff with these laptops, I would not purchase that.
We are looking at laptops that are, particularly now that we have, we're doing things through Google Chrome, through Google Classroom. Teachers need to be able to be online daily, most of the day, in some regard, even if they have a full group of students in front of them. If we have significant downtime on a device, that makes it very difficult.
Right, but the companies that we're buying this warranty are not down the street, so we have to box them up and ship them out. And then we have to wait for them to repair them to come back. And to me, I mean, it's pretty high premium for a device that has somewhat limited life. I mean, maybe on the onset it'd be 5 years. These are out of warranty in 3 years, so in some ways you could say that's their lifespan on a minimum is 3 years. And would we be better suited to having extras to hand out when one goes down?
Do we do that right now?
We do have some spares. I don't have enough that if we have a major surge go through and knock a whole bunch out, but no.
I mean, these are laptops by staff. They're not potentially being thrown around in the back seat of a minivan at the end of school.
We've had some cups of coffee and a couple of cans of Coke go over them a couple times.
Yeah, well, Tim?
So when I went in this morning, there were 2 quotes into the folder. I took both those 2 quotes, started researching pricing. And on the Dell computers, my deviation was I could have bought 80 for $8,000 cheaper than the pricing provided. So I guess my concern as a board member is...
Was that including the...
Yes, it was.
Okay.
So my concern is I don't know where we're going or where we find these companies. I'm assuming it's through our technology partnership that we're getting vendors to come in and bid.
Or it could be from other references to supply schools. I don't know. How typically do we?
Both.
Okay.
So, Dell Computers has a government purchasing bureau, and I think any purchasing that we do in district for pricing should go through the BA to say, yeah, I agree with those pricing and not. And on top of it, and I don't mind waiving bid in emergencies, we should be looking at GSA pricing, and we should be looking at state bid pricing for the comparable models. Because $8,000 might seem like a small amount of money here, but if we do that on every contract and we're paying more than we should be, those numbers are going to grow pretty quick. So I'm not going to have a recommendation for purchasing tonight. In fact, I'll make a motion to send it back for GSA and manufacturer direct pricing.
And GSA is?
GSA is the federal purchasing body where they have Dell contracts with them. It says this is the price that any government agency can buy this unit.
Right. So, and the other one you listed was state bid pricing?
State bid pricing as well.
But that's not in your motion. Motion you just made.
GSA pricing, state bid, and manufacturer direct.
Second.
The motion and a second. Now, this total, well, let me just back up here. So, I mean, I'm not going to make a friendly amendment, but, I think for me, looking at whether or not we really need this amount of warranty on these items, are we really expecting that we need to pay a premium of almost 20% for over 3 years, which if it's out of warranty, we're still fixing it anyway, so are we going to be replacing these in 3 years? Probably, maybe not. I mean, what's this current life of current staff computers that we have now?
Some of them have been kept as long as 6, probably to our detriment.
Okay. But what do you feel the useful life typically is this for staff? Is it 3 years, 4 years, 5 years?
Probably 4 at the outside.
Okay, so what are we doing between years 3 and 4? Because we can only buy a 3-year warranty. Historically, what have we done with these laptops when they're out of extended warranty?
At that point, if we have been able to recycle some of the others, we've kind of cannibalized for parts and done some things in-house.
So, do we have any, I know it's a big thing to ask if we have any historical data on what our failure rate is even in that 3 to 4 year period? Probably not.
I won't have that far back. I'll
All right.
probably have the last couple years.
But, I mean, does it, can we actually make a educated decision whether or not we need or don't need the extended warranty based upon our failure or success of this hardware? I mean, some of it may go down to brand and model specific. I typically have not seen reliability issues with this type of equipment, but I don't know what we've seen percentage-wise based upon how we use them. So, I mean, that's one question I have. I'm not saying I'm going to vote for or against it, but it's a high percentage. You're looking at, say, over 20%. Let's say with somebody, if you're going to go out and buy a brand new car, and they said, hey, we'll give you extended warranty for another 3 years, and if it's going to be another 20%, when most people go, yeah, sure, well, I'd like another $10,000 on the cost of that vehicle. It said, well, I'll deal with the maintenance as it comes or the repairs. I mean, just food for thought.
And just along that comment, does it make sense to, instead of paying 20% in insurance, does it make sense when we order 80, within that 80 number, is there a backup of supplies so that if a teacher's laptop goes down, we have one in the building to replace it? And what is that number that we need to maintain in stock for those times when that's going to happen?
If we're looking for 80, what is the installed base number? Is it 72, 78, 68? Any idea?
We're going to need probably at least 75 of these for staff, if not close to 80.
Right, so if
we weren't looking at additionals at this point. So
well, here's a list of 80. So in this, if the current need is 75, then we have 5 here.
Potentially.
And does it make sense? Does it make sense to be better suited to go instead of 5? We go with because at $8,000 a piece, $800 a piece, you have 180.
Well, if you bought an extra 10, that would be $8,000.
Times 80, it's 14,000 divided by buying $14,000 of warranty on $64,000 worth of computers, divide by 800, that's 18 additional laptops to start right out of the gate. So, I mean, what do we think with the attrition is going to be over 3 years? You know, potentially we could buy 10 or 12 and be ahead of the game, and because in 3 years, we're still fixing them. They're out of warranty.
And I think you're going to find your service warranty with Dell Direct is going to be a much lower cost than what we're getting through a third-party vendor.
That's a good point.
To prevent issues with failures, having a backup in-house might be better than dealing with a warranty. I think if we had a failure rate, that might be easier to make that decision.
So there's a motion to have it re-looked at for GSA, state bid, and manufacturer's direct. Any other discussion?
Is there a second on that?
Yes, seconded by
Okay.
Josh. Not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next, air duct cleaning request. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, we haven't cleaned our air ducts at Henry Wilson in a while, so it's time to get them done. We had some work done in the air ducts last year. We had the heating coils cleaned. All the units that had heating coils on them. It was done by Armstrong, did a very good job, and last year we did get a quote for the rest of the building. They actually quoted us a very detailed quote with each duct they were going to clean. Last year wasn't in the budget, so it wasn't done. So I had them update the quote. The difference is now that if we're going to use government funding for it, we have to do it at prevailing wages. So the quote is $51,012 using those prevailing wages. I'd like to get them booked up quickly only because we can only do this in the summertime when the kids aren't in school. And because it's a small window with the summer program or having to move the kids around with the summer program. So I'd like to get them locked up. They are a preferred vendor. We have used them before. Larry's been very impressed with their work. Very easy to deal with. My dealing with the owner there has actually been very good as well. And so I would ask that we approve this quote and waive the bid process using ESSER funds to pay for this
Okay.
process.
So I went through this quote and I got a few questions. You said that in your earlier statement that they cleaned compressor coils?
We had their heating coils last year.
Yeah. Were they cleaned in place or were they disconnected?
You'd have to ask Larry for that one.
Because in this things that they don't cover, it did discuss that. And the things that don't cover was where my concerns lie. So whether it be cleaning of refrigeration ducts, where they basically said, you know, if they got to get to that, here it is right here. It's
Do we have those, Charlie? Do we have refrigeration ducts?
I don't know, so that's why I asked the question, because it said here,
We don't have the AC part of the heating system. Our air conditioners all hang out windows with the exception of the few pieces that are in a server room. We don't have.
so the other thing it talks about is any fire suppression sensors in our ductwork.
Oh, Larry?
Someone needs to mute, please.
Hello?
Is that Larry?
Hey, Larry?
Hello. Is that Larry?
Yes.
Hi, Larry.
Okay, Larry.
Yes, it is.
So, question for you. Was there, in the past when they cleaned these ducts,
Yes.
there's a bunch of things, exceptions that they note in their quote, as far as things that are not covered, which would be additional charges. One is refrigeration systems, the other one talks about fire suppression sensors and so forth. You know, all these, you know, could be gotchas in this quote. So if we've used them in the past, what other typical add-ons or charges that are not included in this quote have we been hit with? Any? A little? A lot?
No, last year when they did the newest wing that just has the fan boxes in the rooms.
They clean the coils in those that needs to be cleaned because they bring the air directly from outside, and they hadn't been done in quite a while. So that was six rungs that just have the fan boxes. The main ones they'll do now is the duct work itself going from the rooftop units, and the only things in those, each one has a smoke detector unit in it, which would be deactivated when they do the cleaning.
So they mentioned that, so if these sensors are getting deactivated, they're saying they're not responsible to reactivate it. So
when we had one done, we had an issue when we had a fire, smoke get into the library once before. We have to bring in, it would probably be impact fire or the fire department. Basically, we just deactivate the ducts, the smoke sensors in the ducts there through the fire panel, so that they don't get set off while they're doing the cleaning.
And then we need to have an outside service, outside company come in and reconnect those and make sure they're working properly?
Yeah, they don't really disconnect them. We just turn them off at the fire panel so they're not set off. And then once the cleaning is done, because basically when they're doing the cleaning, they're using HEPA vacs and stuff in them. They set up a unit by each duct with a giant HEPA vac and go through them that way.
So, I hate to put you on the spot, but the last time we had him do some of this work, how much additional charges did we pay to other outside vendors?
When they did them last year, we didn't pay anything to outside vendors. We didn't have to deactivate. There were only like four. There would only be 4 smoke detector ducts in the ducts, one for each unit.
But under this estimate, we would have to have like impact fire come back and reinitialize.
I'm gonna check for sure and see if we can't if the fire department just can't be there to have somebody. We can deactivate it from the panel itself, but in the past we had to have, when they were doing it during school hours, that was when there was a fire in the boiler room that when somebody put it out, they used fire extinguishers that it got sucked up into the ductwork by the library and stuff, and it was during a school session during school, so we had to have somebody there to be on watch while they were doing it because school was still in session while they were doing it then.
Okay, but we may have to have an outside company come in and verify that those are back working because it is a safety issue.
Yeah, I got to talk with chief in town first and see what his feeling is on it.
Yeah, because if they get damaged in the cleaning, we would want to make sure that they're actually working properly. And you say there's at least 4 of these sensors that we would be working on.
Yeah, basically it's basically their smoke detectors that are in the ductwork in case there's ever a fire. It senses it and sends the alarm.
Now, the other thing is that they, in work instructions, they cut a hole in the side of the duct, they put a metal plate over and seal it with aluminum tape. Have they done this in all the ducts already, and so those access points are going to be reused? Or they haven't done this for the whole system at least once?
This hasn't. I don't believe this has been done for the whole.
As far as I know, it hasn't been done. It hasn't been done by this company. I know that. It hasn't been done since I've been here.
So when was the last time that all the ducts were cleaned?
I don't have a record of that.
More than 10 years?
It's been more than 10 years.
Okay. So, yeah, so my concern is I think that we're going to have some additional costs past this because of some of at least the smoke detection devices. If there's no refrigeration coils that we have to deal with as far as disconnecting, that would be good.
There aren't.
No, there's no refrigerator because there's no AC or anything in these ducts.
Okay. Yeah, there's a couple things that I had concerns on. Anyone else with any questions? So have we ever used anybody else, Larry, for doing this work?
When we had to do the emergency one with the fire that time, we used Service Master. They were a lot more expensive to just do that one area.
Okay.
That was under an insurance claim.
Right. Tim?
I guess my only question, Brian, is, and I didn't look at the updated in detail, I looked at the original. As far as payment, I mean, we're in April 1st. If we're scheduling these guys in August, I think they wanted to be paid upon signing of the agreement in full. Is that?
No.
I thought I read somewhere in that 30. No?
Could have sworn that I said once we execute the agreement, where
They brought it to me.
Hold on, let's go through it then.
all right, I'll look at it, but that's a concern of mine.
Right. Well, our standard payment terms are net 30, right? Ruth Ellen, our standard payment terms are net 30?
Typically, yes.
Okay.
That's standard.
So,
There is a rescheduling or cancellation fee,
right, yeah, I mean,
which
that,
is not uncommon.
yeah, 15 days.
Under terms, conditions, and warranties.
Does it state the standard payment terms that I missed?
Customer agrees to pay Armstrong for all services rendered at the work location stated above, starting the date of this signed contract.
There we go.
I wouldn't be paying them until they sign the contract.
So,
They have to do the work before they get paid.
yeah, I would say, if I was to make a motion, which I may or may not, I would make the motion, in that motion, what our standard paying policy is, they either accept it at that or have to come back to us.
That's fine.
Because I think that's what our standard payment policy is, and that would be for them to accept or deny, and if it needs to be reconsidered. The board may not waive the
Bidding process.
If they're preferred bidder, and we've used them before, I assume we paid them with standard terms before, but maybe not.
I guess.
Can I speak to that, Charlie?
Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, when we used them the last time, there was no upfront fee for it. It was in a contract like that, but we didn't pay anything until the work was done.
Then it was invoiced and net 30.
Yeah, that simple phone call.
Yeah.
Well,
It could be part of the motion.
I got a problem with if it's in the contract, we're bound by it, regardless of what they did last time. So I guess my motion would be, I'm going to motion to approve, provided the business administrator negotiates 30-day net terms.
Make a friendly amendment that he obtains that in writing, by email or
Yep.
yeah. You accept that?
Yep.
Is there a second on the motion?
Second.
There's a second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Aye. I'm opposed. I had at least one opposed in me, so.
Post cleaning them or closed?
So, moving along.
We just set the tuition for this year. Tuition is based upon basically what we put in the DOE 25 to the state. Using the information for DOE 25, which the DOE actually figures for us, you have three different choices what you can use. You can either use Farmington high schools if people want to go to the high school. You can use Valley Views and Henry Wilson if they want to go there, or what a lot of districts do, they just use the average of the two, which is the 18,288.33 as our tuition rate.
So we can't have multiple rates for different schools? We have to
You
have
can
one?
have multiple
You
rates.
can
You could
have-
have a rate for the high school and a rate for K-8, or you could average the two.
And our rates are, let me grab that form.
This is set by our DOE.
This is set by the, yeah.
Right,
set by
but
the-
those rates for Farmington High School is $17,744.20, and Valley View is $18,534.79.
Correct,
So they're approximately $800 difference.
correct.
What's our timeline in setting this?
It should
We-
be
It
this
should
time
be
of year.
fairly soon. We've had some inquiries for people looking to tuition students in. We also, along with this, looking at this year, you allowed staff to tuition students in. We do have staff that have asked what that's going to look like for next year, because I think some would like to have their students remain.
And the rate is set by the Department of Education based upon our,
That's for the general rate. Now, what you choose to charge your employees is entirely up to you.
Right, okay.
Some districts will waive it. Some districts, in the past, we've said it's $2,000 for staff members to bring in a student who is not having other services. If there's other services, that those would also be added on in addition. This is our base rate for general education. This does not include everything.
Guess,
go ahead, Jim.
if we can move it a week, I'd like to move it a week based on the letter we received and probably non-public conversations we're going to have tonight on the letter that was received in our confidential file. On the second issue of the staff, this actually triggered the reminder to me, how many staff members took advantage of the offer to bring their children into the district during COVID-19 last year? Or how
many staff members or how many students?
Students.
how many students came into district from our staff?
I want
That
to
were
say
not
at this point,
resident.
it's probably 6? Might be 6?
I know it's at least 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
What is the historical average that you see approximately?
The last few years, it's been probably 3-ish, so it's...
Do we know, so we know we have 6 in district now. Do we know what that picture looks like of any additional coming in from staff members? Can we put a number on, or can we put a time period to basically apply if we were to continue that?
Well, I think what I would say back is that staff members have been asking in terms of, if it's free, if it's $2,000 or if it's $18,000, it makes a very big difference as to how interested they are in being here.
What was the rate set for the last year?
There wasn't one set
waived
for
it.
last year.
We waived it because of
It was
COVID-19.
waived.
We waived it to zero?
Waived. To
Yeah.
0 for staff members,
Okay, what was the rate prior to that?
$2,000.
So historically, has it been $2,000? Has it been up and down?
It's been somewhat up and down.
What's the highest you can remember and the lowest, besides zero?
Lowest would be 0. I think the highest I recall, and help me out here, Joel, I think the highest I've seen was 6, but I think that went back to when I was teaching here. Joel, do you remember?
But do you think the average is 2, 3, or is 4 over the time period that you can remember?
I can go back and see what we've got in the files. I don't have it's been the last, during my tenure, it's either been 0 or 2,000.
So were you looking for this board tonight to set that rate for staff?
I was looking for you to set it based on the DOE 25 and then take into consideration what you wanted to do for staff over the next week or 2.
Okay.
So,
go ahead, Tim.
On the staff, and the reason, I know Mary's new, the reason we waived it last time is you have a teacher who's also a parent, whose children may be in another district. If that other district closes, we potentially lose our teacher. If the numbers are the same or close to that we're kind of sharing the resources that are already in place, it's not really costing the district money, I might be okay with that for this year, because we're going to see the same type problems. COVID for our students isn't necessarily going to go away. I don't think we're going to have widespread closures, but we've experienced some closures in our district, but more importantly, the neighboring districts have been shut down quite a bit. So that could impact staffing. But before I make the decision, I'd like to know, what is the impact? Is it 6? Is it 4? Is it 3? Is it 20? And we may not know that because there could be teachers in the district that didn't know that we waived it last year. So if we're going to offer it for one, we have to offer it for everybody. And we need a cutoff date and an accurate number for this board to say what we want to do.
But if I were to put a scenario on, it could be anywhere from $0 to $4,000. It's been as high as 6 in the past. I mean, I don't think we're at 6,000, but I think that there's been some discussion. Some board members may say, we did it at 0 for a reason. Those reasons are abating. May not be abating enough to say that we don't keep it 0, but there is a cost for any additional student to the district, and in the past, we've asked for contributions by employees to cover some of those costs. So I don't know if I'm ready to throw a number out tonight, and maybe they both need to waive both these rates and set them at the next meeting, or set them, we're meeting next week. I mean, I don't know if it's possible to poll to get a feel what those numbers might be.
I certainly can put out a poll. I can, go back to those handful of staff members and say, put it out to everyone, would you be interested in? The other thing is, as we are now recruiting staff,
right,
it is also
it's an incentive,
a potential incentive to say you could be on the same schedule as your students, as your children.
Right. So I'll poll the board. I mean, I don't put anybody in a spot, but based upon the tuition rates being set as high as 6,000 in the past 10 years to 0.
That would be going back to the early 90s.
Yeah. So what was the feeling of each board member they feel would be the highest they would feel comfortable with assessing that cost to staff?
4,000.
I'm leaning more towards looking at what our potential impact is from staff. How much impact is that going to have on our existing resources? And I'm leaning in the direction of waiving that because I see problems in it may not be in our district because our staff did a bang-up job, but our teachers are going to potentially, with young kids, going to be pulled out of our teaching jobs to care for their kids that are in other districts. And I'd like to look at what there's value there for tuition, but is there a cost?
Yeah,
I'd like to look at the numbers.
The 4,000 would be for beginning next school year, not mid-school year.
Well, you had promised it for this year, so I wouldn't say you're changing it between now and June.
Right. Mary?
I'm with Josh. I think that the $4,000 maximum number, it doesn't mean that we can't, in a week or two, once we have some backup information, that we can't say, I guess, are you asking for what might...
No, I was just, what you consider would be the highest.
If we went with charge, I wouldn't go more than 4,000. But I would like to leave the option to decide something between 4,000 and 0 with some feedback, because I just...
Right. Joel?
I guess I would agree with full highest that I would go. To be honest with you, I'm not a fan of tuition staff students, and I'm not going to get into a lot of the reasons why. I don't want to insult people, but it's been, I've seen less of a benefit from it than I have seen a benefit, let's put it that way.
Okay, well, I will agree with the 4,000 number, that's what I had, what I would feel is the highest that I could feel reasonable for the, the benefit of, that we extend to staff, but also cover the cost that may be associated with additional student. Because we could be in a situation where we add a few people and that pushes us over where we need an additional teacher, spread around here or there. But one thought I had is if we're extending this benefit based upon needing to retain teachers, is there any way we could be reimbursed for that benefit through the ESSER funds? Is that a qualifying event?
I don't think so.
Based on what I heard today, I wouldn't say a resounding yes. It's a we could ask.
Yeah, maybe because if we are trying to hire teachers, well, and if that benefit is only extended for this time period.
It has to be shown that it is a mitigating piece. So it's potential that we could get back this year, but I don't think you're going to see it moving forward.
I think the mitigating piece is we're keeping our teachers in our buildings that are parents by allowing their students in our buildings. I mean, that's my concern is, and I don't know the geographic density of where our staff lives, but if we have 6 teachers that reside in the city of Rochester and Rochester schools shut down, we're potentially out 6 teachers that are now on family leave to take care of the young kids. That's the impact that I see to the district. So, I mean, I guess it is a good question in that, if this is a mitigation attempt to keep our people in the building, is there a reasonable cost to that the district is reimbursed out of the federal money? I think that's a good question.
We could ask the question because it may, maybe they would consider qualifying, and then thus we could extend the benefit more easily because it would be, we potentially could be reimbursed for those costs which are associated with adding an additional student. But we're doing it so that we can keep our teachers in force. Just a question.
We can ask the question.
And then if we could possibly get some feedback from them. And I think the board is probably ready to make a decision at our next meeting.
So are you tabling to the next meeting?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye.
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 And then we can address the main tuition after our discussion on non-public, which I think will, at least talk about some negotiations. Moving along to vision benefit.
Yeah, I am looking for the next fiscal year to offer vision coverage to all employees of the district. Wouldn't be any cost to the district at all. I put the rates in here that school care, who provides our health insurance, also provides. VSP Vision ranges from $395 a month to $1,272 for a month for a family plan. I've used VSP for many years and other jobs that I've had, and I've always found them to be pretty good. I've been wearing contacts since I was a teenager, and glasses as well, and there's a lot of people in the district that also wear glasses.
Now,
contacts.
so this would be a benefit that we would provide by sponsoring it, but all the costs
are bared by the employee.
By the employee, okay. I don't think I got the gist of that, but.
Yep.
I just got a question.
Go ahead.
How do we provide a benefit when we have 3 union contracts that this benefit's not in the union contract?
As long as you offer it to everybody.
You offer it
open
to
to everybody.
everyone, and it's at the employee's cost. If we were to say it's going to be a different cost for this bargaining unit than that one, that would be different. But if it's across the board to all,
I disagree. I think once we say this is your contract and these are your benefits, I don't think we can deviate left or right from those benefits that are in the contract. I think it's an unfair labor practice.
Not if you offer it to everybody. Everybody has the equal opportunity to say yes or no. Wouldn't fall into that.
Well, I guess I'm somewhere in the middle. I don't have a problem with offering the benefit. I guess, do we need a sidebar? Potentially not. Do they feel it's a concern that they would grieve? Maybe we could get a response. And I don't,
So would you like me to check with the 3 unions and see if they would see this as a grievable addition?
yeah, we'd like to offer it without potentially amending or considering a change to a contract or being in violation. I mean, I don't know what, Tim, you thought of that.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
You know,
So we'd like to offer it. It's not in the contract. It's not, we can't promise it the next year or whatever, because that's up to the discretion of the board at the time. But if we offer it, we'd like to do that. And are they okay with it? As long as we get some form of acknowledgement from those unions in writing that we can save for the file, then I'm okay with it. So I'll make a motion to allow to offer the benefit of ESP Vision Plan to all employees, to be monthly premiums to be paid by the employee, to all employees as long as the 3 unions consent to allow us to offer it. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Tim seconds. Any discussion? Not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes. Next we have, before we go to that, any new business or old business that the board members have that was not on the agenda?
We didn't get an updated, did we get a, and I know we'll talk about it in non-public, was there an updated decision back from legal on?
I do have an updated.
Okay.
And it came late, so.
Okay. We can talk about that in non-public maybe?
Ruth Ellen, do you have anything else on the new business or old business?
I do not.
Okay,
I just,
go ahead, Tim.
I guess I got one. I'd like the high school grading procedure with the averaging on retakes looked at, because we got a marking period coming up.
So you want the number of retakes that have been done?
I don't want the data. I just think how we're doing, and again, unless Joel can pipe in that it was done by the other board, I see a policy in how we're grading our kids at the high school level is deviating from where we're trying to go. So right now, at one time, a student could take a test, they could do not so well on the test, they could request a retake, and they get the higher of the grade on that process. So what happened was a group of students said, I'm not going to take that test today, I'll just take a retake. And this was a continuous process throughout the high school, so the policy was implemented that from now on, you take a test, you take a retake, we're averaging those 2 tests. And I don't see that as the direction that the district's going. Certainly, I'm prepared to recommend policy to the policy committee if we have to do that. But I just think it goes against everything we're trying to accomplish in the district as we work towards a competency-based education. If a kid's going to take the initiative to study and learn, self-initiate and learn the work, then I think that kid deserves the credit versus saying, yeah, we're going to average them, and then they're like, well, why bother? So I'd like that to be very hardly looked at the district. And I'd like it changed before the marking period ends. And if it's not, I'm prepared to make a motion to change it as a matter of policy.
So I guess my first question, Ruth Ellen, you may or may not know the answer, is that the current policy, if somebody takes a retest, that those 2 test scores are average, is that currently the policy in force?
I believe it is practice in some classes. I don't know that it is full policy across the board. I will certainly confirm that.
So now this brings another question. Wouldn't or shouldn't the policy for retakes be consistent throughout the school? Or should
It
they?
should be. Yes, and I think that's exactly what Tim is bringing up, and I
Okay,
will
so you
have
don't,
that
so potentially it's not consistent? Or you're not sure?
I need to look at it.
Okay, it's okay. It's okay not to be sure.
I can tell you factually, it's not consistent.
So, you know, I will agree with Tim. I think if somebody were to take a retest, if we say they average it, that, you know, that doesn't potentially reflect showing what level the student has actually obtained as far as the material, as far as knowledge of the material. But there's reasons that people may have done that because people may not say, well, I'm not going to try this test, I'm just going to do a retest. So I'm sure there's arguments for both sides.
And what I have implemented in another district when my position was not what it is now, we were finding similar that students might not give their all on the first go around saying, well, I can do that again. And so while the second test was certainly something that they would receive full credit for, being able to take that second test meant that they had to show what they had missed on the first test, what they had done to improve on. They had to show some other pieces rather than just showing up to take another test. It wasn't just jumping through hoops, but it was a demonstration of preparation to do the next step, and then yes, now you can go do the next step. And so kids who genuinely were looking to, yep, I want to improve this, would do that and go forth and do better the second time, and they were better prepared for that.
So give me
Kids who didn't want to do that,
right.
started doing it the first time.
All right.
And so it gave the avenue to do exactly what it is we're trying to get kids to be able to do. But it also put a little bit more, you couldn't just fluff the first one to buy yourself more time. You had more work to do to get to the second one if you were going to do.
So give me an example what that work would be.
Okay, let's say you took a math exam and you missed a section that was on this particular type of proof. You would need to then go back and demonstrate some work, usually through an additional study guide or another sheet that the teacher would prepare to say, before you're ready to take this next test, you need to demonstrate that you've done this to prepare to take the test again. If you've done the preparation, now you can take the test. But that there was another piece to it to make sure that we're good to go. It was kind of a win-win because it better prepared the kids to take the test, but it also made sure that they were serious about taking the test.
If they chose to sleep on the first one, they knew they were going to have to do some additional work and take another test.
Correct, rather than just show up for another test.
And, you know, what I'm seeing, you know, you've got a student's, you know, and I agree with your mentality, but part of that can also be a student staying after for extra help to get to the point where they need to reach that test.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing.
It can be demonstrated through a number of different ways. It's not just.
But I'm seeing that extra drive, and I'm not seeing
the reward for it.
Exactly, and
that's actually a punishment if they're going to.
Well, it's not teaching our kids to have that drive to push forward. And we have
It's not a
name a bunch of them.
mentality.
We have a certain aspect of our student body that are self-starters that take pride in this learning process, and at some levels it gets very, very competitive. And I think the way that we're addressing this grading is taking away some of that competitive, because it's like, why should I? The biggest grade I can get is this, and I'm not even going to bother. And that's what I'm trying to avoid.
So I would agree. I think Ruth, she's kind of looking at it to figure out what the practice is throughout it, and then we probably should have this discussion at the next available meeting that information is ready. Because I would agree that it should be the highest test score, but I would also agree that they have to do additional work to get to that, like you suggested, as part of the threshold for them to get that second test.
And I'm okay with that. I think it makes sense.
Because I think that makes sense, and I wouldn't want to do I wouldn't want to do it halfway.
Right.
So to say, okay, if someone wants to take a retest, then they need to show work and put the effort in the areas that need improvement to make that test available.
We had a form that they had to fill out to petition to retake, and then part of that form said, here's my plan to prepare for this second test. And there were a number of things that could be done, including sitting down with the teacher and going over to make sure that they were, it didn't necessarily mean they had to go do another whole project, that it wasn't, but to make sure that those steps were taken and it wasn't just to blow one off to do the other.
So what happens if a student just doesn't show up because he's absent to take the test? How is that handled?
That's not a retake, that's
Okay.
that's your first time to take the test.
So if I don't feel like taking the test, I just won't show up that day instead of bombing it because...
Well, you're gonna miss some other things.
Yeah.
And potentially, you do that too often, then you've just contributed to our truancy issue.
Yeah. Just, not that I've ever slept through a test intentionally.
Of course not. Purely hypothetical.
I've got a headache, I won't be in.
Okay, anything else on this discussion? Ruth Ellen's going to get back to us on it. We have additional public participation. Do we have anybody here in the audience with anything they want to present to us?
No, it's only Diana and Joel left.
Okay.
I could have some thoughts, but I won't. I'll hold my thoughts.
You don't have to.
I have a few things circled on my paper, but I'll wait for another meeting.
Okay, so at that point, I'll make a motion, and we are meeting next Monday. And we got a manifest to sign. It's on the agenda, it must be important.
That's how we keep from forgetting it.
Right, that's how we keep paying out, so
I
we pay our
remember
bills
a
on time.
treasurer a ways back that put that policy in place, that it hits the agenda because she would show up to sign checks and the manifests weren't signed.
So I'll make a motion to go into non-public session in RSA 91A:3 to ABC nominations and resignations.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.